Our next guest is Thomas Rypens, the direct-to-consumer director of Club Brugge. In his role at Club Brugge, Thomas is responsible for all products and services for the club's fans, including ticketing, merchandising and e-commerce, memberships, innovation and digital strategy, amongst other things. Thomas is also the head of the customer experience team at the club. I'm your host, Lorraine Moore Lucy. Join me as I talk to Thomas about understanding fan behavior and the role of innovation in today's sports industry. Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited for this conversation. But before we begin, I like to start off our sessions with an icebreaker. Are you up for that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Wonderful. What's your favorite quote, expression, or motto, and why is it your favorite?
Um, let's say my background resides in innovation, and in innovation you have lots of quotes and people claiming to know a lot of stuff. But there's always one that really struck me, and it's something that I still use in my work every day. Let's say, and it's actually the comparison between traditional marketing and innovation. Let's name it that, and it goes like this: make things people want instead of make people want things, which is for me a very interesting one, because in my work every day I try to build things that people really want instead of pushing it to them with traditional marketing, for example, and make them want things that we are building from a business perspective. So that's one that I always stuck with me also in my job at Bruges today.
But how do you know what people truly want? Because I think it was Henry Ford who said, if you ask people what they want, if you, because he started the cars, right? And he said back then, if you ask people what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. So how do you
Right.
actually know what people
Nice one.
want?
Well, it's a very good one you're saying. I'm not very sure if Henry Ford actually said it. There's a big discussion about that sentence about the faster horses. What he, I think, wanted to say with that is the fact that you do need a strategy as you lead towards innovation, and you need your own insights and your own direction. Um, but at the same time, I think that in the love brand that we are in, being a football club, and even though people do come back with whatever decision that we make or whatever pricing strategy we have and so on, um, I'm very convinced that we need to start listening to our fans a lot more, because very different than you would have in any other company. The club is actually partly from the fans, or even most of the fans. So for us, that's really trying to understand what do they really want. Obviously, they want to see a game of football, but there's so much more next to that as well that we can understand. And we do not simply want to push season tickets, 400 euros. You just take it or leave it. There's a lot more what we can offer them, tailor made, let's say.
Mm. And I guess as well, there's another way to look at that quote that supposedly Henry Ford said, because he gave them something better, right? So it's not like they were asking for faster transportation and then he brought like something completely different. He went like he scratched beneath the surface and gave them something even better. So from what you're saying, it's like you should listen to get to the core of what the fans want and what the people want, right?
Yeah, I think I have a vision as well, that we are very explorative when it comes to tech, and we are thinking about things that fans aren't really taking into account in their next customer journey. But once you have these ideas, we are very much a fan of validating these assumptions with them. Like there's tons of examples that you can link to that. For example, biometric access in a stadium. Like, how do fans even look at that? Because it might be faster, it might be safer, but at the same time, not every fan wants to give away his face in biometric data. So even though that might be very innovative and new in our world, the question still is, how are people going to adapt to all of these new things?
I'm gonna move on from this question because now you just gave me a whole other idea. I'm like, what is that something that you've been thinking about? Is that something that you're exploring? But if I go down this rabbit hole, we might end up just here because I think we could talk about this for a long time. But how did you get started in sports or in football particularly? Can you take us back to the beginning? Was this sort of your first love, or did it just happen?
It actually just happened in a sense, even though if I look back at my career and the things I've done, probably not by accident, it touched upon football quite some time. I played the game myself for 30 years on a very modest level, but you do understand the dressing room, you do understand life as a fan. If I've been a fan of any team, it would have been, let's say, the Red Devils national team of Belgium, which I've been following for quite some years as well. As a student, I made a few viral campaigns with some landing websites that broke loose at that time. And when I was in my previous job, I also, which was an innovation agency, I also launched and co-founded an own startup in sports tech, which was related to amateur football. And being in that innovation firm in the end made Bruges pick up on me, and still very fortunate to be able to have this role and then to try and change our fan experience each and every day. So it's in a sense it's been an accident. I've always been in agencies and in consulting before, mainly in the digital era or in a digital area, let's say. But very happy to combine this with what's been one of my passions as a youngster as well.
Mm. So you were also quite passionate about innovation from the beginning, and then decided to mix it in with your love for football. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think I graduated as a product designer, and if you and afterwards in my first real job, I did some development myself, did some UX, some UI, some project management, and by combining all that, you're able to talk to both the CTO, but you're also able to talk to the business, and you're also able to talk to the CFO because you've been running budgets as well. So. For me, the stepping into innovation after these first years of digital development um, give a true new meaning to me to what product development and service design is, for example, because it's really about making impact and not as much as about just building a product. It's really about making impact for a company or society and so on. So that for me really changed a lot in my career, and then being able to get all of that baggage into football was very thankful for that. Yeah.
Mm. And I mean, in the last 5 years or so, a lot of like digital transformation has been embraced by sports organizations generally, or at least that's what the main sort of news say, that it's like in the last 5 years, digitalization is coming to sports, etc., etc. How do you feel about that? Are you excited? Do you feel like enough is being done, or do you feel like it was still at the beginning when it comes to embracing innovation and technology in sports?
Honestly, I think looking at the rest of the market, I think it's still somewhat underwhelming at some points because everyone knows, and if you read the newspaper or watch the news, everyone hears these extreme numbers going around when it comes to transfer market and players and etc. Um, and that's also some of the problem at one point, because I think a lot of clubs to become profitable, they have to sell players and they have to buy and so on, which sometimes as a result not a lot of budget goes to this business side of clubs. So a lot of clubs are struggling with 40 people, 50 people, or even less. I don't know. Um, when that means that there is no room for an innovation D2C director, for example, and most of the clubs that I speak to today, which are mid-sized, smaller than us, for example, they are still struggling to get their data together, and when that's simply not in order or in check, that you cannot really talk about very good digital experiences as well, because they're not going to be personalized and so on. So I think when it comes to innovation and making things digital, I think there's still quite a road ahead of us. There's a few very good examples in Europe, obviously, but there's also still a lot of work to be done. And what surprised me the most in football is that not a lot of clubs talk about their strategies, while in the end we're all trying to do the same thing for clients, which we cannot steal from each other. So in that sense, I'm very happy to have these type of podcasts where we do share some knowledge with each other.
Mm. That's amazing to hear, Thomas, because I'm obviously excited to talk to you and get to sort of uncover the hood and go beyond just the headlines and really quantify and qualify what it means to be at the beginning of the of sort of the digital transformation. But now back to your club. You are the direct-to-consumer director, and with that, it means you're responsible for a host of things such as ticketing, merchandise, membership, e-commerce, digital strategy, etc., etc. What is the reasoning behind having all of these different areas under one department?
Yeah, I think before I came in the club, the role didn't exist. So in that sense, the club itself felt the need to get it under one umbrella. I think if you look at all of these different departments, all of them run very well separately as an expertise. If I look at my head of ticketing, head of food and beverage, head of kids, head of merchandising, all of them are very good at what they do. For example, things like stock management in merchandise is something that's very operational, and you need to be very aware of all the things that concern that. I think bringing it back to, and I don't want to sound like the buzzword guy, but sometimes we need to talk about them, is bringing it back to, for example, a customer journey, and understanding that a fan simply does not go only through a customer journey while buying a shirt. He also thinks about a ticket, and he also thinks about his first beer when he arrives in the stadium, because he's considering, do I first get the beer? Do I first get the t-shirt because I'm going to be walking around with a bag in my hand all the time? It's like sometimes these very small nuances of how a fan really experiences a game like that. And I think having someone or a department, and in our case, we've been able to put down a department for this, the customer experience team, um, which really lets us focus on these smaller things more and more. I think we need that holistic approach to step away from the operational excellence that everyone and every club tries to do, but really make it more strategic. And I think making sure that we, as we're offering services, making sure that we design our services is something very important. Just like innovation management itself, because everything that you've just mentioned, from ticketing, merchandising, memberships, all of these things can be innovated, will be innovated. But where do you put your money? Where do you put your priorities? I think it's that's very important to have someone in the end who also makes a decision.
The phrase customer journey is not one that I hear often in sports.
Hmm.
And you mentioned earlier about not creating things for the sake of creating them and then pushing them down people sort of throats just through
Hmm.
marketing. I wonder, how much do you rely just generally on like marketing principles? And the reason I ask this, just so you understand my question a bit more, is because I've been in the industry for like 3 years now, and a sentiment that's been shared is like supporters are not customers. They're loyal. They're very different from, so certain things like customer journey and the funnel and all those things that are traditionally like just marketing concepts within like either retail or any other industry that they rely on and that we know work, they don't get really considered, so to speak. So, how much of like just traditional marketing and innovation do you rely on when you're approaching your fans, or do you also subscribe to the notion that fans are much more different from customers, so they should be treated differently?
It's a very, very good question. It's also a complex one, because in one sense, you're absolutely right. I think if there's something that we cannot do is look at fans simply as a customer who is purchasing X amount of €100 a year, and then making your calculation and hope for the best the next year again. I think in the last years we have been commercializing a lot, and our fans have felt that as well. And I think the fact that we now are making a movement more and more towards fan centric story, I think that also is something that relates to them. We'll talk about it later, but for example, the golden club ID that we've launched is something that proves that as well. I think obviously marketing for us is super important to get in our fans' head at the right moment, with the right message, with the right touch point. But more and more we are. I'm not too big of a fan to do one-off campaigns to try and get something done. I think I always use the same example. I think every club once in a while gives this big tour of beers to all fans who come in early, right? And some fans will listen to that and hop in half an hour early because they want to get the free beer. I think if you want to get fans early in your stadium, there's other things you can do by making or productizing that very thing. Because in the end, for me, it's all about behavior, and and um, and if you want to try and change behavior, you need to understand what your fans really need, what they really want, and simply by sending one email marketing towards them and then and hoping that they will change for the better and come in early, that's just not how it works. Some of these fans have been going to the same bar outside of the stadium for already 25 years. You giving them a free beer right before the game starts is not going to change that. Um, so I think you need to also look at the psychology of things, and I think that's where we need to use marketing where it's at its best, and that is to make sure that they hop from one part of the funnel to the next to in the end indeed convert. But I think you need very good products and services to make sure that they want to move to the next part of the funnel, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Gold Club ID. I was one of the lucky people that got to listen to you speak about what your club is doing to transform like fan behavior. Would you mind telling us a bit more about this? Like, what is it? Why are you doing it? And what have been the results?
Yeah, sure. It's quite a also for me it's quite a big story. It's also quite a new story because it's a product that we've launched at the beginning of last season. I think the season before for us was a difficult one. If you look at Club Brugge's track record, we've been in Champions League for quite some years. We were champions four times out of 5 years. And that's the moment when everything goes very well, that you don't per se see some of the shortcomings you have in your offering, because fans always come back because you win that one game again. And when we had a season which was less as good, and we came in fourth that season, and we didn't really play any role in the playoffs in Belgium at the time, you started to see attendance drop quite significantly. And what struck us in our data is that it was mainly really the season ticket holders who already paid up front for their seat that were simply like, well, I don't really believe in it anymore this season, and for me, this is not good enough anymore to spend my Saturday evening or Sunday evening. Um, and knowing that on average fan is not a B2B fan who can spend thousands of euro on their seat, it's quite a signal, you know what I mean? Um, so at that time, we can come back to the previous question as well and say, do we do one big campaign and then say support the team and be behind the team, etc.? You could do that, which we've obviously done as well. But I think what we've tried to do is productize that as well, as I just mentioned, and really aside from the memberships that we already had, so who are paying. If you want to be a Club Brugge member, you pay 50 euros a year. You get 25 euros in starting budget on your card. You have a few other benefits like free shipping, and you get some cash back for every transaction you make. But what we decided is, if we really want to make sure the stadium is full, which is not per se linked to sports results, we need to find something that fans look forward to engaging with. And that's when the Club ID Gold was born. So for all season ticket holders, we decided to have a golden membership which cannot be bought, and the goal was to make it priceless because of that. So what does that mean, or in operations? If a fan made it to 90% of all games, and if he wasn't able to make it, he could actually resell his ticket through our secondary market. If he did one of both actions, that's when he was able to complete the streak. We also rebuilt our app in that sense, that a fan could check in the app how his streak was doing, how many strikes do I still have left when it comes to the 90%. And in the end, if you made it to 15 out of these 17 games and you did come and cheer the team, we made you gold. So that meant that no fan who said he wanted to pay 300 euros for the golden member actually got a golden member. It was simply those who showed up and who were consistent in reselling their tickets if they couldn't make it. Um, what was surprising to us is, if we looked at the data from the year before when there was no golden membership, there should have been about 10,000 fans from the 22,000 season ticket holders that we have. By launching the golden membership, in the end, we ended up with almost 14,000 season ticket holders who actually did all these steps, which showed proper behavior change. And then, obviously, if you look at it from a club's perspective and the business side of things, Our attendance went up as well. Our amount of release tickets went up, which again gave better free tickets to resell. So our reselling of tickets went better. So the collateral revenue that we got from actually offering some benefits towards our fans really spoke to them. And just to conclude the story, maybe to also give you the insights on the benefits of a Golden Club ID, for which fans actually did all this, it's also something that we researched, which brings us back to the beginning of the discussion. Like, we really listened to them, validated some of these ideas about gold, and for example, some things that actually made it till the end was a 5% discount on a season ticket price was something that they would really care about. They would also have unique experiences that other fans wouldn't be able to apply for, like, for example, give the kickoff to a game, be part of a sideline experience, and so on. And they would also get birthday gifts at that time. And finally, you could also have a golden box with a golden card as well, which actually for a fan is something they really feel affiliation for, the fact that they are part of the golden group, which for us is not a VIP group, right? Because that's where the priceless part stands for. No one has paid for that golden card; they simply earned it, and that's a very, very important topic.
And you're reminding me, like, I was recently listening to this podcast and they were talking about the importance of changing the incentive system. Um, and this, I'm thinking of this because it relates to the question of our customers. Should we treat fans like customers? What's the difference, etc.? And like the free beer that you mentioned and the free stuff that you could sort of entice fans with, it doesn't work for them because that's not the thing that draws on their heartstrings, right? Because, like you said, they might have been going to the same pub for 20 years. They're not just going to suddenly change that because of that kind of incentive, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is part of understanding fans and giving them what they want is understanding the experiences or the things that would incentivize a sort of a behavioral change, right? Because then you're not just simply sending that one email that covers everyone, but you're actually creating little things that then accumulate and create a more permanent behavioral change. But how did you know to do the gold club ID? Because there's specific things that you mentioned that incentivize behavioral change that aren't simply just tied to money, because like you said, you can't buy the gold club membership. So how did you know? What was the process? Was it like, did you have focus groups? Did you send out surveys? Did you just have like an internal meeting? Like, what was the process? I'm thinking particularly with those that are listening and want to also be innovative and listen to what the fans want.
Yeah, so it actually started with a problem statement, obviously, and making sure that we actually got to the numbers of it, like how many fans are staying at home, how many seats would that mean every year, what would be the potential lost revenue when it comes to other revenue streams, being merchandising, being food and beverage, etc. So once we made that clear, that's when the ideation phase started, when we thought about how could we fix this, not from a marketing campaign point of view, but really from a product offering. And once the idea came of this unique group of very loyal fans, and also a need that we felt with the fans is to reward the most loyal ones, that's when we indeed had first focus groups where we initially validated our own ideas. The jobs to be done methodology, of the framework there is something that we rolled out with them, and then really asked them through exercises, what is your core need to come and watch a game? Is it really the sports result? Is it the experience? What exactly is that? And they gave us some other ideas as well. And in the end of these days that we've organized, we really made them rank out our ideas and their own ideas combined, and really put them dot points on the wall to really score the ideas that we had. And which is always a small group, like I think we hosted four focus groups with different types of segments of fans, and in the end you need to combine all that. But then we decided to move into quantitative research as well, to really push it in a survey and see how would 4,000 fans within this segment react to that. and then you quite fast come to conclusions where you see this is a good idea, this is not a good idea. And for example, it's something I can share as well is we've been talking through during these ideations phases, like what if you would add a fast lane for the golden membership, for example? Like what if these people would be able to access faster or get beers faster? And immediately in the data we saw that that was exactly what they didn't want. They didn't want it to be a VIP part, right? They were okay with people getting discount. They were okay because they made the effort. But like on a consistent basing, like skipping the line was not something that would really vibe with the golden strategy that we had. So that's also what we then deleted from the proposition and from the ideas. In the end, when you have, let's say, hundreds of ideas of what you can put in the golden membership, like what in the end do you put in? I think it's what we did is we mapped it on an impact versus effort scale. Effort being both effort operationally, but also cost wise. What can we bring back to a group which potentially could be 14,000 people? You cannot give signed shirts to 14,000 people from a cost perspective, also from an effort perspective. And then define on the scale of impact what would make most impact. So there's definitely a lot of low-hanging fruits that you can implement with players or anything else. Like, for example, the golden card for us was low-hanging fruit. The cost is not huge. The sending it to a fan is not immense. We've been there before. So that's something that we in the end included. And then, for example, one of the main drivers we think as well is also one of the reasons why we sold out so quickly in our next season ticket sale is the 5% discount that a lot of our fans had. And then you need to make sure that your business model, that the numbers are right, that if the potential revenue you are expecting from this actually adds up to the cost you make in the discount you're giving.
I think that's so crazy that the fast track or fast lane incentive wasn't appreciated, because it's so easy to assume that that would be appreciated because it's something that I personally would appreciate. But that's so interesting. Like, you can't really assume things. You really do have to ask, and you really do have to follow sort of the numbers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. Mm. And obviously, the approach to fans today is very different from the approach that clubs took back when you were a young boy, and back in, because I grew up in Botswana. So back when I was a child, like, the approach was completely different. What changes do you think have been for the good within the sports industry, like the approach to fans, and which ones do you wish the sports industry in general would kind of go back to?
I think both of them are related to each other. I still remember us playing, let's say, the World Cup final in our own backyard with some friends, and then there were no statistics, there was no data. It was simply the love for the game and that one goal from Roberto Carlos to name you one, which is something that I still remember as a kid. I think at the same time, being able to be everywhere, whether it's at home or whether it's at a pub or at the stadium, you can watch everywhere. And that, I think, is something that really internationalized the game as well, because it lets us as clubs as well grow immensely. Because we've been talking to clubs like Frankfurt or Copenhagen or Leipzig or Benfica to learn from them as well in their offering. It lets you compare. It also pushes you to grow as a club. And at the same time, it's also what I mean, but with that's related to what I sometimes miss. I think if we talk to our older fans, and we do have quite a bunch of plus 40s as well in our stadium, when we talk to them about loyalty and gamification and these and the next things that are in line, some of them are their feedback is simply like, just let it be, man. We just want to watch football, like you don't put us in rankings and levels, and then you don't give us emojis, and we don't care about that. So it's really about understanding them. I think what you mentioned before is if you understand very well that the bunch of fans that are older or plus 40 plus 35, let's say, might not be about that. But if we've also just launched a teenager membership as well, and we've researched that group thoroughly as well. They are very much into that. If they can have something for free by doing a few things more than anyone else would do, maybe digital, maybe even phygital or offline, they are ready to make a sacrifice to gain something which is free. So I think it's really making a balance between not losing the core of the game, which is a football game, and then at the end, I think you can sometimes push fan experience a bit too far, because convenience is one thing, but really trying to change, and I think we might get in another rabbit hole if we talk about metaverse and NFTs and all these things. I think this is above and beyond some of our fans' heads as well, but there's definitely also fans who could really relate to that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I will ask you something about NFTs, but before that, I just wanted to ask you about commercialization, because that's something that you mentioned briefly at the beginning, that maybe the sports industry is becoming a bit more like super commercialized. What's your relationship with that concept of the commercialization of sports in 2024?
Well, I think it's a necessity in a way, because the markets grew that way. If you look at media rights, if you look at player transfers, this make up quite a bunch of the revenue that a club is making. Um, and at the same time, I think it's not always ready for what's to come for us, because everyone's. I think making revenue as a club is one thing. I think we all know for Bruges, we've been sold out for years by now. So as the boards members and so on, they every year they know or think that the stadium is going to be sold out, and commercially that lets you grow, which we've done over these years too. But at the same time, we're going to get into this era of Generation Z and Generation Alpha, where they're all fluid fans. Like, look at how Cristiano Ronaldo's new team has exploded in followers, simply because all of them followed them. They didn't follow. Well, obviously they followed Real Madrid, but if you know my point. I think also in Belgium we have a few other sports which are very like cycling is very big in Belgium too. The fact that on a Sunday afternoon a youngster is really able to choose on all the different touch points he's using, the commercialization of football really needs to be reinvented in a way, because simply hoping that the tickets will sell yet again is not a strategy that will get you in 2035. You need to make sure that you find other ways, and that's what I get from all these innovations we see, like AI and metaverse and NFT, and we are trying all sorts of things to see whether or not we can digitalize some of the commercializations that we're doing, but it's not an easy chore.
Mm, mm. Oh, I love all the answers to. With everything you say, I have like 20 questions, but I will restrain myself and just go back to the NFTs. I'm not going to ask you to explain what NFTs are and what you think they blah 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 all that. But what I want to know is innovation. Like every year there's a big thing that's coming out in the last like 5 years, or in the last even 20 years, right? There's always a big thing that comes out. 2022, the hype was Web3, NFTs, crypto, loads of sports clubs invested in sort of like crypto partnerships, etc., and just trying to give the fans what they want. But how can clubs truly, now we're moving into the part that's super practical and just tips, like giving as many practical tips as possible, but how can clubs and other sports organizations really identify which innovations they should focus on, especially knowing that they have limited budgets, limited resources, everything is moving so quickly? How can they identify the right innovations?
I think for one, make sure that you have experts in house, which is not easy, but like the trends are everywhere, and if you simply read the news, you can see what's going on. Like, again, the same examples: AI, metaverse, and so on. The thing is that you need a decision maker who is an expert in for example, in innovation, but also in digital strategies and so on. That's one. I think you cannot do this with someone who's not an expert in these markets or understands how he needs to prioritize these things. That's one. I think what is a must for all clubs is to explore. I think if the amount of things we are now exploring, which might not end up in our proposition or offering tomorrow, are immense. That's an investment, of course, in FTEs and also in external consulting as well. But it's a must to at least explore them and see how they can blend with your own club. Do you need to be first at everything? I don't think so. We are also not the first in everything. Um, why? Because we're very considerate at what we bet on. I think um, the fact that we work by a methodology, for example, design thinking methodology, is something that for us makes these decisions for us. Because if you simply do this by gut feel, you will have a lot of risk for innovation. And I think lowering the risk of innovation is by following very specific methodologies. And in our case, we always map our ideas to three pillars, which is desirability, feasibility, and viability. Does a fan, in our case, a fan, is he really waiting for this type of innovation or this type of product or this type of service? That's one. Are we able to actually make it feasible? And three, are we able to make or monetize this in a sense where everything, yeah, makes sense at the end of the story? And if the innovation or the thing that we are thinking about does not tap into all three, we simply don't move. And
Mm.
I think we've seen examples of the metaverse, and we've seen examples of NFTs, of companies that did follow a gut feel or a trend, because also media sometimes makes them explode. The question is, did they actually map this to, for example, these three pillars? And I think the reason why we haven't per se moved on all of the trends is simply because for us it didn't make a case. But we are definitely moving on other fronts where we do feel it makes sense.
Mm. You mentioned exploration, and I'm wondering what sort of innovation should be prioritized? Like, what should clubs be looking at? Should they be looking at like what the fans want, so they innovate towards that? Profitability? What do you think is maybe like the top three priorities that sports organizations need to be better at when it comes to innovation?
But I think it sometimes also depends on culture and the league you're in. If you look at the Belgian league, we don't have, let's say, the best results in profitability. So I think for a lot of clubs, the focus will definitely be there. On another point, I think it's also efficiency, because before you're able to bring something to fans, it can also be a very tedious job to bring it there. I think if you look at AI, um, it's an obvious answer. I think if you look at the amount of processes that you can automate or even make easier, or even do it for you, I think it's quite clear that we need to invest in that. And let me give you again a simple example. For Bruges, we've decided about 7 years ago that we do not want to open a ticket office to sell tickets anymore, a physical ticket office. So we've moved everything from our ticketing sales online. So we don't have long waiting queues before the ticketing office before a game to buy tickets, only to ask questions, which was at that time quite a radical choice. But obviously, when people want to come to a game and they can't come to a ticket office, they will have questions. So what we decided at the time is, let's make an online ticketing platform, an actual tickets platform where you can ask questions in, which is a Zendesk implementation that we have. Um, there's agents behind that answer all of these questions, which costs money, which at the same time doesn't always go fast enough in fans' opinion. Because if you ask a question on other services around the world, sometimes you get an answer within a minute. At this time, for us, they need to wait. Let's say that the SLA is now standing on 2 days. Sometimes it's a day and a half, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's within the hour, but maximum is 2 days. This is a perfect example on how you can simply improve your fan experience by using AI to provide the right answer at the right time for through the right touch point for a client. So I think AI is definitely a very obvious one, but still that's I'm going to say the same thing. It's another rabbit hole where we can pull ourselves in, because it's so massive what we can do with AI. And but for us, it's definitely something we are looking at. Still have a lot of work in as well, because there's other challenges too. And yeah, if there's one thing where I'm surprised where not a lot of clubs have been investing, which is a surprise to me, and for me is also one of the reasons why I'm very happy to be in Bruges, is the actual data. I think so many clubs are making decisions not based on data, because they haven't been able to get a 360 view on their complete fan data, or even business data. And if you're not there at this time, I would definitely advise to do that first, because that's the enabler for me for everything that follows after that.
Mm. And like you said, it takes you away from the gut feeling decision making to more like there's a specific methodology that you're following and you're looking at specific things. I think you are in a very advantageous position in the sense that you like innovation, you like exploring, you are passionate about this. Like I can tell from just listening to you, and you're also in a leadership role, right? But I guess one part of being in a leadership role, understanding innovation, is getting buy-in for the rest of the team to sort of understand the importance of certain ideas that you have, or the importance of really putting weight behind exploring and listening to the fans. What has been your process to really getting that buy-in and making sure that your team understands the vision and where you are trying to take them?
Um, it's not only the team. These are big stakeholders, of course, in the strategy and the tactics that we implement. But I think it all starts from the board. The fact that we in our club have such open-minded and innovative board as well, that they know and that they support, for example, initiatives like a customer experience team, and that they also give us a white paper to fill that in the way we see it happening. And with that, which I mean a white paper, which also means budget. It's super important to have that, because I think if you have a very conservative board, it's going to be very tricky to push down some of these innovations, because not every exploration you do will have a return on investment. Hopefully, a lot of them have, but they will at least lower the risk of, let's say, you doing a 1.5 million investment in God knows what. Um, so the board is one, and I think secondly, um, yeah, moving and visualizing your strategy towards the team, doing organizational shifts sometime, like for example, implementing a new team next to all the services that have been there for years, hiring of the right people, and also the operational consequences of some of the choices you make. um, you can decide to go all in on your e-commerce strategy, but the team from merchandising needs to be ready for that as well. So I think for me, lobbying the strategy to the right people at the right time in the organization has been crucial. I hope that I've been a bit successful in that. But at the same time, I think people management and really understanding what someone wants to get done in their daily job. Because if I can tell you one thing, and you'll probably understand that as well, is that if there's something that anyone from any simple human being has issues with, it's change, right? So if you change someone's day-to-day job, if you change a fan, the way they have to pay or the way they have to access the stadium, they don't like it. So really, change management and guiding that process towards where you need to be is super important. And I think if you lack the people management skills in this type of role or in this type of environment, then it's very difficult to push it through. And at the same time, I think also, and that's something that I've always appreciated about the style of the house in Bruges, is daring to make decisions, because not every decision is a popular one. Closing down a ticket office to be able to already know upfront how many sales you have, and not 2 minutes before the game, is has been very radical. Um, but I think, yeah, having these brave decisions sometimes push you at the front of innovation and not in the middle of the pack.
Mm, mm. And I just thought of something like what if it was the opposite way, right? So maybe you're not in a leadership position and you possess all this knowledge and you understand where the industry is going, and then you're faced with a leader who believes like it's all about the game, let the game be the game. Let's change a few things, but we don't really need to like do all of that innovation stuff. What would you say to that employee or that person in a club that is facing that kind of situation? Are there things that they can do to sort of try to convince their team and sort of like change from the bottom up?
I would always advise to put business model first, because if there's anything that board members or C-level persons have had in the past, or maybe the background is often financial or legal or whatever, what the language they do understand is the one from money. And if you can come up with a business case which makes the fuzzy less fuzzy, and you can keep it to numbers and say, if we invest, I don't know, 60K, which might feel like a lot for one project, but we can turn it into 200K with quite an easy business model, then if a CEO doesn't follow that, then he might be not the right person as well. So, but I think that is also not my favorite part of the job, the business modeling part. But it is super important if you really want to talk to your CFO and ask for an investment, which, yeah, which is quite some money for sometimes a mid-sized club.
Mm-hmm. That was very good and very practical and doable. And then finally, I know I've been like bombarding you with questions. It's just like the conversation is so good. But one last question. If anyone in a leadership role is listening to you right now and wants to improve their approach to their fans, what 3 pieces of practical advice would you give them?
When I came in the club, we didn't per se do fan feedback. So what I would say, if you're interested in making impact for your fans or for your customers, in this case, any feedback is better than no feedback. So stepping away from only the gut feeling will makes you feel like you're moving in the right direction quite fast, and it's not that difficult. The only danger there is that you're not asking objective questions, which then still push you towards a gut feeling decision. So you need to make sure that, like, even like a very small consulting support there might help to try and do it the first time. But any feedback is better than no feedback. So that would be my first one. I think the other one I've already mentioned. I think if your data ecosystem is not ready to do full-blown marketing and gives you 360 view on your fans and doesn't show you the behavior that they're showing on a weekly basis, then that's really your number one investment, I'd say. And I think the third one is, or at least somewhat, it's at least one that I need to tell myself sometimes, because if you're in the innovation part and you try to be very much at the front of that, you sometimes want to do very risky things. And but if the data tells you to kill your darlings, or your fans tell you to kill the darlings, then you do. Silly example there as well to make it concrete is, within the golden membership, we played around with the idea, what if we would, one of the benefits that we could give is, what if fans could potentially after a game watch a press conference real in live, like not on television, but what if they would be in the same room as the coach and then maybe ask one question even. We actually did research that, and there was no one interested in following a press conference live. So while I thought that was a sublime idea, so in the end they didn't make the proposition. So
Yeah. Wow. It has been such a jam-packed conversation, and I'm sure people are going to love it just as much as I loved having it with you. But if anyone wants to follow up with you or connect with you, is LinkedIn the best way, or where can they connect with you?
yeah, I'm quite active there as well. I also try and share some of the things that we've done, or sometimes even planning on doing. So they can definitely follow me or connect with me there.
Yeah, and we will have your LinkedIn link linked in the description box. How many times did I say link? Thank you so much, Thomas, for a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Oh, pleasure was all mine. Thank you for having me again.